The bank was quiet that morning, the kind of stillness where the shuffle of papers and the soft whir of counting machines became louder than they should. At the center of the lobby, a man in a worn jacket stood trembling slightly as the teller pushed back his documents. Her lips curled with disbelief, and her voice, sharp and cutting, sliced through the murmurs of the waiting crowd. "This is fake. You're not a real veteran. Stop wasting our time." The words hit him harder than any battlefield ever had. The air thickened, every pair of eyes turning toward him, some with pity, most with suspicion. His throat tightened, but he said nothing, only clutched the folder of medals closer, as though they might protect him. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing who's listening. His name was Daniel. He had served silently for years, but unlike the men who returned to parades, Daniel had come back with scars that didn't show, scars that whispered in the dark and made sleep impossible. Today he had walked into this bank, not for glory, not for recognition, but simply to prove his identity so he could access the pension he had earned. Yet in this sterile lobby, beneath fluorescent lights, a stranger's accusation stripped him of his dignity. Whispers rippled through the room. A mother pulled her child closer. An old man shook his head. Daniel's cheeks burned, his heart pounding against ribs that once carried the weight of armor. He wanted to shout, to defend himself, but years of discipline had taught him silence. And so he stood, a soldier now unarmed, facing an enemy he couldn't fight. The teller leaned forward, her voice dripping with disdain. "Anyone can buy medals online. Do you expect us to believe you fought for this country?" Her words carried across the lobby like a sentence passed down. Daniel's hands shook. He thought of the men he had lost, of the oath he had taken, and for the first time in years, shame forced his gaze downward. Then the heavy doors of the bank opened. The air shifted as boots struck marble with deliberate weight. A man in a crisp uniform stepped inside, his chest gleaming with decorations that caught the sterile light. Conversation stopped mid-sentence, as though the entire room had been commanded into silence. It was a general, his posture unbending, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on Daniel. He approached slowly, each step echoing, until he stood between Daniel and the teller. The general's voice, low yet thunderous, carried authority that silenced doubt. Who dares call him a fraud? His gaze burned into the teller, who stammered but found no words. The general turned to the crowd. "This man is no fake. He is a brother in arms. I've read his file. I've seen his sacrifice. While some of you slept safely in your beds, he was out there bleeding for you." Gasps filled the room. A woman near the back covered her mouth. The old man who had shaken his head now stood, shame spreading across his face. Daniel's eyes welled, the weight of isolation suddenly lifting as justice marched in beside him. The teller faltered, her arrogance collapsing under the general's fury. I didn't know," she whispered, but the general's voice sharpened. "You didn't care to know. You humiliated a soldier because you thought his scars weren't enough proof." For a moment, the lobby was frozen. Then, slowly, people began to clap. First one, then another, until the entire room echoed with applause that rolled like thunder. Daniel, who had walked in alone and humiliated, now stood tall, the general's hand firm on his shoulder. Because justice doesn't always roar, it sometimes walks in quietly, stands beside the broken, and reminds the world who they truly are. And in that sterile lobby, beneath the fluorescent lights, a soldier who had once been forgotten was remembered again. If this story touched you, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to hear more stories like this one. Because here, every story is a reminder that courage never dies, it only waits for its moment to be seen.